It's the Fitness Lab Pittsburgh podcast, a new episode every week. A podcast about movement, part of making your life complete. Fitness Lab Pittsburgh, aka FitLabPGH, brings you interviews with people in the Pittsburgh area who understand movement is part of what makes life complete. Looking for a new movement idea or just want to hear interesting stories about people who make movement a priority? This is the podcast for you. Whether you consider the gym, dojo, or fitness studio your third place, or just want to learn more about movement, activity, and fitness to enhance your life, give FitLabPGH a listen. We interview locals in the Pittsburgh area who make Pittsburgh a great place to move. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Subscribing is free and gives you notifications when we release new episodes. Each podcast episode will be long enough to pique your interest and short enough to hold your attention. Have an idea for an episode? Know somebody we should interview? Or just want to connect with us? Drop us an email, fitlabpgh@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at fitlabpgh. Already a fan of FitLabPGH? Check out our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast for movement professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers weekly interviews with movement professionals featuring topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you enjoy our next interview, starting now. FitLabPGH and our sister podcast, Moving to Live, firmly believe we should treat movement as a lifestyle. That's why FitLabPGH, in addition to our podcast, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, releases a movement tip lifestyle hack 1-minute video. And every Thursday, we do a written FitLab Pittsburgh features of a 2-legged or a 4-legged mover in the Pittsburgh area. Got an idea for an interview or a FitLab Pittsburgh features? Drop us a message on any of our social media channels. If you like what you're hearing, leave us some feedback on Apple Podcasts or whatever your podcast app is. And stay around to check out our latest interview with Dr. Bob Vano, who is the founder and current president of the Premier Bicycle Club. FitLabPGH back with another podcast episode. For this episode, we crossed a bridge, but we didn't go through a tunnel. And today's guest we find from the advantages of social media. I was talking to him just before we started recording, and I mentioned that sometimes you think you're going to run out of people to interview, and then you find somebody or you find multiple groups on social media and say, oh, these would be interesting interviews. So today we are with Bob Vano. He is the founder of Premier Bicycle Club, and his actual profession, other than managing and directing the bicycle club, is he is also a chiropractic physician. So Dr. Vano, thanks for taking time to talk to FitLab Pittsburgh.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to participate.
And I want to hear more about the Premier Bicycle Club, but I think a lot of times as we were chatting before recording, some of the interest is to find out the stories behind people. So when they see you out on the bike. So you are a Pittsburgh native, and I'm curious, growing up, were you an active kid? And if you were an active kid, were you a cyclist or just other things?
You know, cycling goes back to a time when I was in about 8th or 9th grade. A friend of mine, we'll call him Stevie, we used to go out on the north side of Pittsburgh, and I think each summer we would rack up about 3,000 miles. Into high school, when I made the decision to move out north with my father, Stevie and I used to meet in Westview and put on a lot of miles. So I guess you can say that cycling was always something that I had a real passion for at the time. But back then we didn't wear helmets and we still went 50 mile an hour. So it was a little dangerous. I think back to what I used to do at that time, and I think how crazy I was. And today it's completely different for us.
And I know one of the people we've interviewed recently was Elaine Tierney, who was one of the founders of Dirt Rag Magazine. And we were talking about how the technology of bikes has changed. And I would imagine back when you were riding with Stevie, the idea of actual index shifting or now electronic shifting and clipless pedals is like, yeah, I don't know what those are. You just, whatever the bike you had, you rode it. And sometimes you got on a hill and you got halfway up the hill. It's like, well, I'm not going to make it. And you got off and you ran, or Stevie ran to keep up with you.
Right. Well, it certainly has changed a lot. I remember that first purchase, I saved $129 and bought a Schwinn at what used to be the Children's Palace on McKnight Road. And, today you can't get into a really decent bike without actually dropping down about 20 times that amount. But yes, technology has changed a lot, especially with the carbon frames and different geometries. Quite frankly, there's all kinds of bikes out there, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to get into cycling. You can spend just a few $100 nowadays and get a great tool to have a lot of fun.
And I'm curious with the cycling. I know I was like many other kids my age. I'm a little bit over 50. In that I had a bicycle, and sometimes when it was Little League and mom or dad couldn't drive me, it would be kind of like, yeah, go ride your bike to Little League. If you can remember back, what was it that made you go up a McKnight Road and drop $129 on that Schwinn?
Wow, that's a good question. I just think it was the first purchase I've ever made as a kid. Saving that $129 was a big accomplishment for me back then. And I don't know. I think I just had this passion in me that I wanted to go out and ride a bike and do different things. We lived close to Riverview Park, and I used to go up there and ride a lot. In fact, I remember going down Davis Avenue towards the bridge and to get into Riverview Park, if you're familiar with that area, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are. And I actually had my first bicycle accident on that road without a helmet and broke my right wrist up against the curb. And so I have very fond memories, I guess you can say, of when I started and I made that purchase, but it didn't stop me. So it was something that I knew I wanted to do. Unfortunately, as I went through, college, and I was in the United States Army, cycling just wasn't something that I kept doing through that time frame. And I remember when I was in chiropractic college in Davenport, Iowa, that I made another purchase. I went and bought another bike. And some classmates of mine and I used to go up and down the Duck Creek Trail in Davenport. And that was something we did just to relieve some stress. And I continued to ride that bike through the time that I ended up getting married, and we had our children. In fact, I remember riding with my daughter at the time. She was only in first grade, and it was funny because we bought them bikes, and we were just doing a short ride from. We used to live in Richmond, Virginia, and we were doing a short ride up from the James River. And Caitlin was struggling to get up this little 1% grade hill. And I kept telling her, just keep telling yourself, you can do it. I can do it. I can do it. So I think I just had that passion in me that I eventually passed on to my kids. Although I think I ruined it when I took them on a ride on the Great Allegheny Passage one time, and I made them ride 42 miles when they were only 16. 16-year-olds don't like to get up and move a lot.
And it's also the attention span for many of them to go however long it takes to go 42 miles.
Right. Well, I'll never forget that day. My daughter was not happy with me, but then she does get out and ride her bike every now and then too. So.
And I know that's one of the questions that now when I interview people, I ask them, it's like, how did you get into whatever your activity is? It was because mom and dad said get out the door, or was it because mom and dad did it? And in this case, whether you've recognized it or not, you've passed it on to another generation of cyclists where, riding is normal. It's fun. It's a lifestyle. You can't imagine not doing it.
Well, I think if you were to ask my kids now, I have twins, Matthew and Caitlin, who are both 26. In 2012, we did our first trip on the trail, the Great Allegheny Passage and the C&O Canal Towpath. We rode from Pittsburgh to DC, and my son actually rode that with us. My wife and I, and my daughter was actually our pickup person she wasn't riding her bike, but she drove to DC to pick us up and bring us home. But I think if you were to ask my son what he thinks is one of the best accomplishments, the biggest accomplishments he's had, it was enduring that 95-degree weather in July that year, and riding 335 miles.
And I mean, that's something that you can never take away. It doesn't matter that you don't get a t-shirt. It's the fact that you can look at the map and say, I started here, I finished there.
Right. Yep.
I'm curious, you've talked about how you got into cycling. Do you by any chance still have that first bicycle that you ever got?
I don't. Every now and then I wish I did, though.
I know I've known a few people who've cycled for quite a few years, and a couple of them still have that first BMX bike or maybe that first 3-speed bike, and they have it hanging in the garage, and you look at it and just like, that's pretty cool. I don't have my first bike either. People who don't cycle or people who don't treat movement as a lifestyle, they often think, they don't really think about cycling. Maybe they see the group of brightly colored riders who are riding on the Allegheny Passage, or they see the Tour de France that comes up every summer, and they don't realize that there are different ways to bike. So your cycling that you've done, have you gone the gamut? Have you always been a touring cyclist? Did you do some racing? Do you do mountain biking? What's your preferential choice of cycling, and has that changed?
Well, I've never been into racing. Okay. I'll never be the fastest guy. I even tell our current club members, I'll never be the first guy up the hill. I'll never be the fastest guy in general, but I can go the distance. I haven't, being a career guy, I haven't had much time to do much touring. I generally try to set a goal to do something each year, at least a 4 or 5 day ride. I enjoy long weekends. I take about one Friday off a month through the cycling season to make sure I get 2 to 3 days of cycling in each month in a row. But I haven't had much opportunity to get involved in touring. I'm hoping that by doing this now, that when I decide to retire someday, I'm going to spend less time in the hospital and more time on my bike.
And I think that's a great message to send out to people who listen. I'm curious with that. You mentioned you spent some time in the Army. I know you're a chiropractor. What was the decision to be a chiropractor? Was it at somewhere along the line, I think this is something I want to help people? And as you've been in the career, have you seen how cycling has maybe helped you connect with some patients? Or is it just something, okay, I do this as my career and I really like to cycle. It's one of my passions as a hobby.
Okay, let's break down your question. Go back to the Army day for me, please.
So you spent some time in the Army and then you went to chiropractic school. What was the impetus or what was the decision to say, I'm getting out of the Army. This isn't going to be a career.
Okay.
I'm going to go to chiropractic school. Why chiropractic school versus business school? All
right. So I'll start with that. Thanks for clarifying. I had a passion. I tell this story a lot. I was working in a Bob Evans restaurant in Cranberry Township, and I met a waitress there who told me her boyfriend was a doctor. And I asked what kind, and she told me a chiropractor. It sounded interesting to me, and I think that she saw a sparkle in my eye. So the next thing you know, I'm receiving a phone call from him. His name is Ken Pinnell. He still practices up in Cranberry. Great guy, great doctor. He invited me to visit his office, and I knew that day when I walked out of there that I wanted to be a chiropractor. I knew that the philosophy of care, the care of the human spine, the structure, the function, that it made sense to me. So I remember looking at his sign as I left the office, and I decided someday I'm going to have an office like that. And I needed a way to pay for that. My parents weren't in a position, so I decided I'm going to join the Army because of the Army College Fund. So I basically joined the Army for that reason. I never, ever had an intent to stay in the Army any longer than I needed to, because I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor. And I went into the Army, and 2 months later, after I was honorably discharged, I moved to Iowa and went to chiropractic college. So, there was, of course, a hiatus of cycling at that time. I wasn't doing anything at that time because I was preoccupied with running around Germany and Fort Benning. But I made my way to chiropractic college, and then that was where I started to get back into the cycling aspect of my life.
And I know you mentioned that you and some of your classmates, it was a stress relief. I know when I got my PhD in ex-phys, cycling was a big stress reliever in doing triathlon training because you could bitch and moan and complain about things that were going on, or you could just burn off any energy you have, or it also would make you think more clearly. Some of your best ideas would come. It's like, oh, I can do this or I can do that. In
all honesty, the development of the Premier Bicycle Club happened on a bike ride. It's funny. I talk to a lot of our members, and I the most common thing I hear is that this really takes them away from things. And that's one of the things that I strive to do when I plan a ride. My typical Saturday morning ride will involve roadways and often directions that make you feel like you get away from life,
We're talking with Dr. Bob Vano. He is a chiropractic physician and the founder of Premier Bicycle Club. He's talked about how he's gotten into cycling and how it's not only been an important part of his life, but an important part of his family's life. So you're clearly a cyclist. You clearly enjoy cycling, and many people who do that, that's what they do. They do their job, they do their cycling or their hobby, whether it's cycling, golf, tennis. But at some point you came up with the idea, it's like, I don't want to just do this. I also want to have, or I want to organize a bicycle club. And I guess a two-part question would be, why did you decide that? And why the decision to start another bicycle club rather than becoming involved with one that already existed?
Well, I was involved with another bicycle club that already existed. I'm just going to be honest. I was disturbed at the lack of attention that was being paid to the community to offer more cycling options. There were no events being planned. There was just no attention to detail. The ideas that I had, the things that I shared with that particular club, on what we needed to do to make enhancements were ignored. And I and several friends were just talking one day, and we decided, let's build what we want.
And I think you mentioned earlier you were talking while on a ride.
We were. We did a lot of talking on rides. So a lot of our ideas came to fruition because of those discussions. But we decided that we wanted to create something that was going to give the Pittsburgh community an opportunity to participate. Now, not everybody participates. We even have members who don't come out and ride their bike. We can't figure it out. But we make every attempt to make sure that they know these opportunities exist. But another focus in our club is not only that, but to create opportunities for people to understand better what healthy eating is about. And we feel that healthy eating and cycling go hand in hand. And so any events that we plan, we always try to have healthier food components instead of showing up to a bike event and being thrown donuts or just pizza. We try to have other healthier options, keeping in mind that a lot of people still don't make those choices to be healthy in that way. But we enjoy the fact that what we have created has allowed more people. I mean, let's face it, the numbers tell the truth. We started with 9. We're approaching 400 members, and we're not even in November of 2019.
And when did Premier Bicycle Club start?
We launched on January 1st, 2017.
It's kind of the field of dreams. If you build it, it will come.
Exactly. And knowing what people were explaining to me and wanting out of a bike club helped me to create what we've done. Now, we've gotten ourselves in pretty deep. We have a lot of high expectations that have been set. So we've raised the bar, but the thing is, it doesn't stop there because I have a great team of people who are helping me to accomplish the things that we have in mind. We have so much more in store down the road as it relates to cycling events. I mean, I'll give you an example. One event that I created in 2017 was our Shenandoah and Skyline Drive Tour. Okay. Now, everybody loves the Shenandoah Valley, but not everybody has gotten to ride their bike in the Shenandoah Valley. So we we started with that event, and I was a little bit shocked because we were having such good growth with the club. We had 100 members by May 1st, and we had only set the goal to have 100 by August 1st that year. But we didn't have a lot of people signing up for this bike event. And I remember one of my board members, Mark Jopling, and I had an idea on the phone that we got to get on the phone to people, because this is going to be an event that people are going to love. So we started making phone calls to members and people that we really wanted to consider coming for that weekend. And we had about 25 people show up that year, which we were only a few weeks shy of the deadline, but we had 25 that year. The following year, we had 67 participants. So that more than doubled. And this year, we had almost 120 people show up for that event. So it goes to show you that something that you put we knew we had something good. We knew we wanted to share with people what this was about. And now people can't stop talking about it. And I think that we're going to see at least a 25% growth in that event for next year as well, in 2020.
I know, as somebody who's been involved in the movement field for a couple of decades, whatever the movement is, there are always cliques within it. You know, I've got a friend who advises CrossFit gyms on business practices, and he says, you know, the CrossFit gyms that tend to be more successful are the ones that tend to try to attract members who want to work out, who want to create the community. The ones who try to see how many members can we qualify for the CrossFit games, they typically don't do as well, because not everybody has the time or the physical ability to do that. Similarly, there are always cycling clubs that are known as, this is the racing club, or this is the touring club, or this is the club for the people who want to do mountain bike rides, or the crazy Crush the Commonwealth ride. Mm-hmm. You're wearing your Premier Bicycle Club cap now. You walk into a Starbucks, or you walk into the Boathouse in North Park, and somebody says, well, what's Premier Bicycle Club? What do you tell them? What is it?
Well, we tell them that we're a recreational bicycle club. But we offer rides for all levels of riders. And we're doing our best to get more and more rides surfacing around the Pittsburgh area, but we're running into one problem, and that is the lack of people who want to lead rides and post them. It seems that hundreds of people like to participate, but only a few like to actually organize. So like every nonprofit club, we struggle in ways that all of them do, lack of volunteers. However, I will say that even this year at our Shenandoah and Skyline Drive Tour, I had over 30 people step up to volunteer and help out with things. And this year we've had an increase in our ride leaders. So we are making movements in the right direction. We've had more people. I think we've more than doubled our rides that are on our calendar this year. Next year, we hope to do the same. But in telling people that I meet who want to know about Premier Bicycle Club, we tell them, just come out and ride with us. If you're a cyclist, we probably have a ride that's going to fit your ability. And if we don't have one that's going to fit your ability, then how about helping us, and we'll help you create one? Because if it's you that wants a certain ride level, there's others that want that same thing. So we'll work together to make it happen.
And I know I've lived in a number of areas across the country. And for people who are not skilled cyclists, or people who maybe are new to the sport, they may be runners, they may be swimmers, or they may just say, boy, this looks like something that's neat to do. It can be very intimidating to just show up at a ride because, you've been cycling quite a while. You've probably got all the fancy clothing, and you mentioned carbon fiber. And if you're like me, you're probably somewhat of a tech geek and like a nice fancy bike. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that you don't enjoy riding along at a slow pace, educating other people. How do you sell this to people, or how do you explain to people, say, oh, I'd like to ride, but I'm just too slow to ride with real cyclists? Well,
I do want to clarify, because this is an important topic, even in our own club with people who've already joined, that cycling is a dangerous sport. It's not just something that anybody who just goes out and buys a bike at Walmart is going to go out on the road and be safe. They have to understand that there are risks involved, and not everybody has the ability to go out and accomplish or cover that terrain that the Western Pennsylvania region provides us with the hills. So
I like the way you put that. Provides us with the hills.
Provides us. So I don't want to say that we exclude people, but we want people who want to consider joining to take it as seriously as us and know that it's a serious sport with its, safety issues. But we all work together and we ride together because in groups we are safer. There's a lot of people out there who still just go out and ride by themselves. That is probably the most dangerous way to ride. In fact, I haven't heard of one bicycle accident in the Pittsburgh area since I started cycling that involved a group of cyclists. But I hear about accidents and injuries or even deaths by individuals. So I think that the number one thing that the community needs to understand is that riding with a club like Premier Bicycle Club gives them an opportunity to learn, to excel, and to be safer all at once.
And I know we were chatting prior to starting recording. We're up here in Gibsonia, and you mentioned you're trying to spread awareness and rides for Premier Bicycle Club around the Pittsburgh area. You and I were talking a little bit how people don't like to go through bridges or across tunnels simply because, the terrain sets it apart. With Premier Bicycle Club, and I know we'll have show notes and your website, but are there rides during the riding seasons that are offered in all areas of Pittsburgh, or are they more focused more in the North Hills?
Well, most of our ride leaders do lead rides all in the North Hills area, Mount Nebo Road area. We do have some rides that are led in Pittsburgh as well. We would like to branch out into the west, the east, and the south. And we do anticipate an increase in ride leaders in those areas. We have a lot of people who live in the east and the south who do travel north on a weekly basis to ride with us. But we do plan to expand that. But podcasts like this will help us get to more people, I feel.
And I like the fact you say you're a recreational bike club. People are listening to this. Do you have different types of rides as far as rides that are for mountain biking, rides where you go on the rails to trails, or is it mostly on the road?
Mostly on the road, but we do have rails to trails rides as well. Mountain biking is not something that our club is doing at this time. I'm not saying that it couldn't expand into that, but I think there are some other clubs in the Pittsburgh area that are very well known for their mountain biking. So we'll leave it to the experts to work on that while we work on what we work on. But yeah, we are having a number of trail rides that pop up. We hope to see more of those, but most of it is road riding.
And I know some people may be listening to this and they may say, "Oh, that's I do a lot of riding. I might like to get involved with volunteering." What is the commitment for somebody who wants to volunteer to lead a ride? You know what? Just have a desire to lend a hand. We try to keep things as simple as possible. Each one of our events, we post on our website the event, and as a member, each member gets their own login credentials. Until they're a member, they won't see everything that our website has to offer them. But in each event, we set up a volunteer link and we let people know what we need for that particular event. In fact, this year we had 6 events. We've already done 5 of them. We've got 1 more to go this year. So people will get to view those volunteer opportunities and just lend a hand. I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of just a few minutes of setting up some tables, breaking some things down, doing a little cleaning after an event or after one of our parties. But it's never something that's, it's not going to encapsulate their life. We're not asking them to give their first child to the club. We're just asking them to give us a hand. And the more help we have, the better we can make our events. That's what made that Shenandoah event so great this year. I mean, over 30 people volunteered to help out. Without those people, the event would have never been as successful and enjoyable as it was. I know with FitLab Pittsburgh, we're always trying to spread the idea that movement is a lifestyle no matter what the movement is you try. And for people, I think you've done a great job of describing why it's safer to ride in a group. Brightly colored people, I would assume everybody obeying the traffic signals. And I'm curious for the people who are listening who maybe haven't done organized rides before. You and I have probably both experienced the time where you show up in a strange city to do a group ride, and it's all nice until they hit a certain spot, and then all of a sudden it just shatters. And if you don't know where you're going, you can get lost. So when they do these rides with the Premier Bicycle Club, are there ride leaders who go at different paces? Are there cue sheets that they get for when they join? How does that work?
That's a great question, because we're really trying to encourage our members to get on par with technology today. Okay. There are many different models of bicycle computers that allow you to program in your own route. One of the things that we do is we create routes ahead of time, and we post those onto each ride. Our ride leaders, I'll touch on that for just a second. Ride leaders get to post what type of ride they want to lead. If they want to lead a ride that averages 18 mile an hour, then that's only going to attract, we hope, the people who are capable of riding 18 mile an hour. Other ride leaders may post rides that only they only expect the average pace to be about 14 or 15 mile an hour, while others might only be 10 to 12. So generally with our club, one of the things that we get complimented on all the time is that our rides stick together. People ride together. You see, what's the purpose of joining a club and being part of a group if you're not actually going to be part of a group? There have been many times where we've witnessed people with other rides or other clubs where they get just left, and now they're on their own, and they have no idea where they're going. And unless they had that GPS file, and even if they did, quite frankly, it sucks to ride by yourself. We find it more enjoyable that when people ride together, it becomes more of a social event as well as a fitness event. And doing it together helps us to excel and reach new goals. So many of our members will admit that riding with our group rides and knowing that they can feel secure that we're pausing at a turn, or that we've given them a GPS file. And in most cases, it's both. You've got a GPS file and we pause at those turns. Our ride leaders are all respectful people who care about the people that are showing up to these rides. And that is the number one quality of all of our ride leaders. They actually care. And if they see a rider who's fairly new to the club, who's not capable, they're going to be honest with them and let them know which other ride we offer that might fit better for them.
We've been talking about the Premier Bicycle Club. I think that's a great place to stop with the comment that you made that what's the point in joining a club unless you're going to, I'm paraphrasing here, unless you're going to hang out with the other members.
Right.
And I think that's a great point. And the comment of social combined with fitness really leads into what we try to do at FitLab Pittsburgh. Movement is a lifestyle, not just an activity. You never know when that bike ride finishes up with a healthy meal and communication for maybe plans for new bike rides. So, Dr. Vano, I want to thank you for taking time to talk to FitLab Pittsburgh, both about your background, about how you got into cycling at a young age, and the Premier Bicycle Club.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of FitLabPGH, brought to you by Moving to Live. Intro and exit music is Marathon Man by Jason Shaw. Check out the show notes for contact info for our latest guests, links to other information mentioned in the episode, and links to our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise for professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Your free subscription gets you notified when we release a new episode. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email us at fitlabpgh@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FITLABPGH and like us on Facebook. If you enjoy our podcasts, please tell your friends about us and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Make FitLabPGH a go-to place to learn more about movement in the Pittsburgh area. Until next time, keep on moving.